Join me as we talk all things true crime.
Made contact and shattered.
Liberty, the missing 4-year-old. The parents have called in and those of the mother have went for a walk. Came home, now they can't find her. They've been feeling worse.
Turn it over to another agency. Let's get some help.
Where are your kids? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say? You're over here in Hawaii? Chad, where are Lori's kids?
4 were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds.
Most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here for another ATS live stream. I'm so happy to see everybody in chat. So hello to all who have commented and my moderators. Thanks for being here. Hello to my members. It's good to see everybody. I put together a few clips. I put together something that I hope you guys like. Pretty much, I had stumbled on this podcast with Dr. Drew Pinsky. I don't know how you guys feel about him, but I've always liked Dr. Drew. I used to watch him on Celebrity Rehab and, just a lot of talk shows that he's commented on. And he is an addiction specialist. He's also a real doctor. So I feel listening to his opinion on the case was interesting and I wanted to share it with you guys. I didn't want to play his whole podcast episode. So I've just picked and chose like little parts of it with him and his guest. Give me 1 minute, guys. Okay. Anyways, so I just feel like him and his guest have a lot of interesting insight. His guest is a retired Navy SEAL. So he's got a lot of experience using a K-bar and everything else that he brings to the conversation I felt was interesting. So I hope you guys like it. And thank you, Cement Shoes, for becoming a member. I really appreciate that. And that's a great way to start the stream off. I appreciate all your guys' support. So thank you so much. So what I have is like 6 minutes of highlighted clips that I've edited together. I've got new images. Well, to me, they were new. It's Maddie was doing like a modeling stuff for an Instagram company, like clothing company. So I added some of those images into these 6 minute clips. So there'll be some like 6 minute highlighted clips, and then it'll go into Dr. Drew's podcast episode. We'll also discuss the Instagram information that has come out. I know some people aren't really trusting People Magazine. Court TV and Vinny reported on it. So that's, legit enough for me for right now. I believe they said on Court TV that it was from a law enforcement source close to the investigation. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe that's what Court TV was reporting it as. Either way, we're going to discuss the Instagram messages, which I believe is pretty likely to be true because I just have always felt he probably stalked them through the internet, like cyber stalking as well. But that's just my opinion, and time will tell, and we'll find all that out when this goes to trial, etc. So there's also, I've listed the evidence inventory from his apartment. So we'll start off with the apartment inventory list, and then I'll go into all that other stuff that I said that I've lined up for you guys. In the middle of the Dr. Drew podcast, I've edited in other things that kind of corroborate what they're discussing. So you'll see they're discussing his addictions, which Dr. Drew has insights into that aspect of this case too, given the fact that we know that Bryan used to use drugs in high school and all that. So Dr. Drew is going to give his opinion about, stuff that he's heard. And then like I said, I added things in that kind of paint a picture. So let's just get playing it. Thank you so much for being here. If you haven't hit like, please hit like. And then after we play everything that I've edited together for you guys, which is around like 30 something minutes, I wanted to play the new Court TV segment about the inventory of his apartment. So I haven't watched it yet. I just seen it as I was going live. I'm assuming they're going to go through the search warrant stuff. So let's start off with me reading the inventory list. And then once we get there, we will elaborate with Court TV near the end of the stream. Okay, guys? So thanks for being here. Hit like. Appreciate you guys all so much. And yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Seized 1 night trial type black glove, 1 Walmart receipt with 1 Dickies tag, 2 Marshalls receipts, dust container from Bissell Power Force vacuum, 8 possible hair strands, 1 Fire TV stick with cord and plug, 1 possible animal hair strand, 1 possible hair, another possible hair, a 3rd possible hair, and a 4th possible hair, 1 computer tower, 1 collection of dark red spot collected without testing, 2 cuttings from uncased pillow of reddish brown stains, larger stain tested, 2 top and bottom of mattress cover package, separately both labeled C, multiple stains, 1 tested.
So I just want to elaborate a little bit real quick on the aspects of that inventory list where it states like this was tested, that one wasn't tested. So they're just holding on to evidence and just DNA, evidentiary stuff that has evidentiary value. So they can't add their like chemical solutions to everything they found and stuff, because that'll obviously destroy what they've gathered. So that's why you'll hear like this one was tested and then this one wasn't tested. They're just waiting to hold on to things because they're gathering everything that they're allowed to gather during that search warrant, and then they're gonna test it as they need to along the process. So in case anyone was wondering why some of it said that it was tested and other parts it said that the item wasn't tested, I believe that they're just holding on to certain things with DNA on it so that they don't just tamper everything right off the bat.
Weeks before the slayings of 4 University of Idaho students last November, the man now accused of killing them sent a series of messages to one of the victims on Instagram. An investigator familiar with the case tells People in late October, an account that authorities believe belonged to the accused killer, sent a greeting to one of the female victims, the source says. When he didn't get a reply, he sent several more messages to her. He slid into one of the girls' DMs several times, but she didn't respond, the source tells People. Basically, it was just him saying, "Hey, how are you?" But he did it again and again.
It was a pretty...
So yeah, Nikki Rex said they need to be very careful with what evidence they do have. And Alicia, good to see you. She says they have to hold on to some for the defense to test. And that makes a lot of sense because just in other cases that we've studied, when we looked through the discovery files and when they mentioned things in the case that were gathered, some of it says, once this case that I'm referring to ended in a plea deal. So it's probably going to be different. But at the same time, you see in the paperwork, it says that certain pieces of evidence can only be held on to for a certain amount of years, etc. So even if this is come and gone through trial and stuff, like some of this stuff, I wonder, and let me know your guys' thoughts, if they'll just hold on to it without testing it anyways, because years down the line, they might need to use some of that stuff. Again, the case that I'm referring to ended in a plea deal. So I feel like that was probably why some of the stuff never got finished being tested, but we don't know if this one's going to end in a plea deal or not. So if it is, then maybe some of that stuff will be tested. Who knows if he ever tried to, who knows, down the line or whatever. But yeah, there were a lot of hairs. And thank you, Truth Wins UK. I appreciate that. They also mean they haven't field tested evidence on the scene and will send it straight to the lab. Okay, thank you so much for that as well, Ashley. So yeah, it's interesting, and I'm curious to hear what Court TV has to say about it all too. So let's continue on. Again, this is just going to be some clips that I put together, and then it'll transition into the Dr. Drew Pinsky stuff with other clippings too. So enjoy the show, and thanks everyone for being here.
Him saying, "Hey, how are you?" But he did it again and again.
It was a pretty large knife, so it's really hard to call them puncture wounds. And they were definitely stabbings. And I mean, it has to be somebody that's pretty angry.
And you can see straight into the girl's place.
Now, when the coroner says it must be somebody who's pretty angry, I wanted to align that right after they talked about the Instagram messages. Again, we haven't heard law enforcement come out and say that Instagram messages stuff is true. I believe it's true, but well, I believe that he probably cyber stalked them. So we'll find out what has basis and what doesn't. But either way, was he angry that he wasn't getting replied to? Just stuff like that kind of circles in my head. Now, here we visited this in our last live stream. It's from Nancy Grace when she visited there. And I do believe that the in-person reporting is important for us to look at, because here she's in that parking lot that's like right behind the house. I just can't help but wonder, is this where Bryan parked, especially on August 21st when he was there late at night and watching them possibly. It's just the perfect little parking lot and area if you wanted to be a creep. So just re-looking at this and just knowing that his phone, was pinging in the area 12 times before the murders took place, that parking lot to me is just a red flag as far as, is that where he, would stake out and watch, kind of like a predator watching the prey. Adrian said, I think he is smart, but due to his mental illness, he didn't see clearly and made stupid mistakes for him. I'm almost thinking the same, especially with the fact, like, we've heard that he was seen speeding away from the scene, right? At like 4:20 in the morning. We've also heard that car that was seen in the gas station video at 3:45, we have heard that it's him. Again, I don't know 100% if that car image is him. I know that the chief said, I believe to ABC that it was, but again, I don't know. Either way, in both those instances, they stated that he was speeding away. So, what would have happened if he got pulled over for speeding right after that murder took place? What would the cop have seen if he decided to pull him over at 4:20 in the morning as he was speeding away, So, yeah, I agree with you. I think that his impulsiveness and just his high risk, whatever is going up in his head, made him make some mistakes. And I think it's very much what a lot of professionals and retired law enforcement officers are saying. I think that we're giving him too much credit. Like, even though he studied Ted Bundy, he's not Ted Bundy. Like, I'm very curious his IQ level. Either way, we know that Ted Bundy was a genius. And Ted Bundy went from being caught as well as BTK for much longer. We don't know, though, how long Bryan's been doing this killing spree. Like, we assume that maybe it was just this time, but other people are assuming that it's not his first time. So either way, time will tell. Yeah, he's so smart about being stupid. Corey, that's a good one. Good morning, Princess Megan Elsa.
This is the parking lot we've been hearing about right behind their home. I mean, it's right here. You can see straight into their home. These girls never had a chance against a predator.
I would look up and I would see people in the windows almost every night.
And close enough that his phone was touching their Wi-Fi.
Definitely looking into any reports of a stalker or that type of behavior around any of the victims.
We don't want to put our investigation in jeopardy by releasing what we have, that we believe it was a targeted attack. I mean, to be honest, you're going to have to trust us on that at this point, because we're not going to release why we think that.
And come to find out, we know now that law enforcement had much more information than we were all thinking. And a lot of us stated that. A lot of us thought, you know what, there's got to be more to this, that they know. They must have seen that white car speeding away at the scene, in much sooner than we all thought that they had something. So it's just interesting to look back and hear the statements by law enforcement. And now that we know that they were on to somebody this whole time, it's interesting because a lot of us had the feeling that they could just lie to the public to protect the investigation. And that's what they were doing. And they obviously had a plan the whole time.
She had no idea that true evil was genuinely watching them.
You know, it was early in the morning. Seems likely that maybe they were sleeping.
Now, a few live streams ago, we discussed this bag that was on the table, and the agents are outside the window taking the picture through, and I believe they're crime scene investigators. But either way, this was just an additional picture of a DoorDash bag. Now, this one is not the one that's by the sink that says Xana on her name. This appears to be different. It doesn't have the white letters on it either that the one near the sink did. Now, I wanted to just share this because I just haven't seen much sharing of this image of a DoorDash bag or a food bag. Now, who knows where this fits in? Who knows if that other bag was inside this bag, or maybe this is a separate order. Either way, I just wanted to share it with you guys because it's just another picture of a DoorDash bag, possibly. I shared it on my community page, and I got somebody commenting like, how does this help the case? I never said that this was supposed to help the case or solve the case. I just find it interesting. Hello, Nicole Morgan. It's good to see you, and thank you for becoming a member. Thank you for being here. But yeah, I just find it interesting, and I hadn't seen anyone share it. So, of course, yeah, this is a different bag, Marshall Dove. It looks a little bigger, in my opinion. Some people said that they see the Jack in the Box still on the outside. Some people have said that it looks like Panda Express. I'm not sure. I feel like it might be Jack in the Box still, but just a different one. Either way, I thought that it was interesting to share. So I hope you guys think it's interesting. By no means do I think that a picture like this would solve the case. So I don't know. You know how people are. Oh, thank you, Marshall Dove. She said, it only adds to the scene. Yes, all important. Good catch. Thank you. And this was originally shot, I think, by Fox News.
Fatal.
Now, I want to just pause it real quick. So on this DoorDash stuff, this was something that I picked up on the interview room with Chris McDonough, and he had his lovely wife Karen on with him as his guest. And as anyone knows, they went to the scene themselves. In addition to Brian Enton and Nancy Grace, we've kind of followed every one of them throughout our reporting here. So one thing that he had mentioned was in the affidavit, which I never even really thought to, think about it the way that they worded it, but it says in the affidavit something along the lines of like when they're discussing how somebody DM heard somebody say there's somebody here, and they said what they felt like the investigators put in the affidavit that they thought that it was Xana because she received a DoorDash order. Now I'm just now realizing that they've only stated that she received the DoorDash order. And I know a lot of people are out there wondering who sent the DoorDash. Good morning, Vanessa89. It's good to see you. Who sent the DoorDash? Was it really Xana who ordered it, et cetera, et cetera? Now, I just want to lay it out there that the affidavit does say, except for Xana who received the DoorDash order. So what that means, like, are they just stating that she received it and that she wasn't the one that ordered it? I don't know. But I was tipped off to the verbiage by the interview room when they were going through it, and they pointed out the fact that it just says that she received the DoorDash order. So that's why they felt that she was still up, and might have been her saying that. So it's interesting. I don't know much about, I know a lot of people have gone down the rabbit holes of the DoorDash, who ordered it, who brought it, etc. my head is spinning there, so I'm curious what you guys are thinking there. But I did think that it was interesting that Chris McDonough and his wife pointed out the verbiage in the affidavit, that they believed that Xana was up and maybe she was the one that stated there's somebody here, and it was because she received the DoorDash order. We also know that she was on TikTok at 4:12. So whatever took place, whether she picked up, grabbed her food, went into her room or whatever, and she had 12 minutes to kind of eat it before she got off TikTok or something happened, that, needs to still be ironed out. But I'm curious your guys' thoughts, and those on replay, comment down below too. Wonder if she ordered around the time they all came home, and because far away is so late, took forever. Right. And it was like the weekend before they went away to Thanksgiving, where things just busier for the restaurants then, and your order gets put in and you kind of just have to wait. That's happened to me before. So Jessie Lynn said, I think she ordered it. It is very interesting to hear Chris M. and his wife's input. Agree. And again, I'm not saying that she didn't order it. I'm just saying that I thought it was interesting that they pointed out the verbiage in the affidavit about it. DoorDash here locally takes close to an hour, no matter what you order. Sorry, guys, I have a cold. I did not mean to do that in the microphone. Some people think Bryan ordered it and he delivered it. All that can be traced. We do know that they spoke to the DoorDash driver. They didn't state what he had said. Thank you. How subtle. Either way, I still am all over the place in my head about the DoorDash order, how exactly it plays in. The thing that I do know is she's on TikTok at 4:12. So whatever took place with that order, she's still alive 12 minutes after. So just something to keep in mind, right?
Fatal ones were to the chest area or the upper body area. Well, there was a lot of blood.
Just one of her last messages, she reached out to Jack and said, Jack, get back to me. And he didn't. She goes, we share a dog together, which they did. She's like, you need to reach out to me. So
please come over. She was wanting Jack to come over.
There's no damage to anything, and the door was still open.
Now, I want to revisit this, and House Huddle asked a good question. Was she scrolling TikTok, or did she post a video? She commented on somebody's post, right, guys? For those who know, she commented the word queen, which was her kind of like cheering on the girl in the post or whatever, calling her queen or whatever. Chat probably knows the details, but yeah, she was on it. They know for sure that she was still on it at 4:12. So here, this was the first press conference. So a long time ago, we visited this quote numerous times. I'm under the impression, good morning, allegedly, with Brittany J. It's good to see you. I'm under the impression, up until the other day, that he's referring to the front door with the wreath. Now I'm thinking about it more, and I'm like, he never was specific about which door was still open. Is it the sliding door? Is it this, the front door with the wreath? We know that a neighbor told a Fox reporter that when they walked by around 8:39 in the morning, the front door, and that's the quote that the reporter says, we don't hear the neighbor saying it, which I hate interviews where the reporter's repeating what they heard. Like, I'd rather just hear it from the person. I want to hear the neighbor say the front door. But either way, they're stating the front door, quote unquote, was left open or was wide open. But here, I'm wondering what the chief is referring to. Which door was open? Is it the wreath one, or is it the sliding glass one? And for those who watched the Chronicles with Olivia documentary, which was superb, I loved it. I teared up. It was amazing. There's a part where Kaylee's mother is just kind of recounting things in her head, and she kind of questions, why was the door unlocked? And then she says, well, she can't go down that path of why, there's nothing they can do now. But do you guys remember that, or did you hear that? Like, she had thought in her head, like, why wasn't the door locked? So I'm wondering how her thoughts fit in with the chief and the neighbor stating that these doors were open. Which door specifically? I want to know which one he's talking about. because again, this it matters with the fact that we know that he comes back at 9 in the morning, 9:12 to 9:21. His phone is pinging in the area. So he comes back only hours after the crime. You know, we've wondered, did he go inside to look for the sheath? The doors were open apparently. Or is it something where he just wanted to know or see, you know, what's taking so long? Why are there no cops showing up? That was the other thing in the 2020 episode I thought was interesting, which I don't know if you guys heard or saw, but one of the locals, I believe it was a law enforcement officer, said something about that morning he saw cops racing to the scene and they had their sirens and their lights on. And he said, you know, why do they have their sirens and lights on? To me, that was interesting because I live somewhere where I hear a siren and I see like a cop go by with lights on like once a week, maybe more. So it was interesting to hear the local kind of recall what happened that day and remember seeing the law enforcement speeding by with their lights and sirens on. So, and it was like abnormal for them. I thought that that was interesting to hear. But either way, yeah, which door was left open here? I want the press or somebody to re-ask the chief this you know, recount exactly what he means here.
He was wanting Jack to come over.
There's no damage to anything, and the door was still open when we got there.
The front door, I'm told by a neighbor who walked by that morning, was wide open around 8:30, 9 a.m. 8:30 or 9 a.m. would have been a pretty good amount of time before police ever got the call that those students were dead inside.
Investigators have learned that a physical...
And here's the other thing. If that neighbor did see the door open around 8:30, 9 in the morning, did they see the white Elantra enter the area too? Because he's there at 9:12, you know, is that something that maybe the neighbor has already told the cops about? So this little clip is just revisiting the media report early on in the investigation. I believe this was before they even announced the car that they were looking for. Investigators have learned that a physical struggle took place before the murders happened. Again, how does this reporter know this? Which one? We hear in the 2020 episode that Kaylee had defensive wounds, right? So what exactly does this mean as far as investigators have learned that a physical struggle took place before the murders happened?
struggle took place before the murders happened.
She's a tough kid. She was a streetwise child. She
herself was a web sleuth.
You know, everyone that he cared about, he had their back.
An angel, and that she just made me proud.
If you could speak to the person responsible, like...
You never know how far something like this reaches, how many people it hurts, and how they're gonna have to live with this for the rest of their life. And it's something that'll never heal, you know. It's something you just would never wish on your worst enemy.
We're trying to determine if it's just a singular incident or if there was a broader based stalking incident. One call came in for an unresponsive female, an unresponsive person. And so when officers arrived, they addressed that issue, and then as well 2 additional people were found.
So here, now we've gone through other Papa Rogers posts and I've read them in other live streams. So if you want other stuff that he's posted, please revisit the playlist I created. This was something that was sort of found in a thread. So this wasn't a post by Papa Rogers. This is just him responding to somebody else's comment. So somebody had shared the picture that I'm displaying to the right there, the one that we all seen, that the foundation has the blood trickling down. Now, there was a lot of people early on, before the coroner said, yes, it's blood, before, Duty Ron, Ed Wallace, all of them have stated, looks like blood to me. We've seen pictures in the body cam footage of the noise complaints the month prior or 2 months prior, and there was no trickling of this substance down the side of the foundation. So, a lot of people have just said it's blood. It lines up right near Xana's bedroom, etc. So this person in the group, which I've redacted her name because obviously I didn't want to just blast her, but she commented, "For crying out loud, that is rust dripping on the foundation. The blood theory was debunked in a matter of days. Stop posting it." And normally, because I run some of these Facebook groups, I've got a few of them. And I try to have people be kind. And if you don't agree with the post, scroll by. But here, this person doesn't scroll by because she's not in my group. And I think it's interesting because she's acting in a way that kind of stirs up a group. If you don't believe something, then just scroll past it. Like, why do you have to comment? But interesting enough, her commenting and kind of just being confrontational, I bet a little bit, I guess you could say, by saying stop posting it, it stirred up whoever this Papa Rogers guy is, right? So she kind of got the reaction she wanted from somebody. But interesting enough, it's this account that we are all thinking is this Kohberger, right? And there's a lot of corroborated information that says that it was. I believe that it is. Time will tell. I know people are still skeptical, but time will tell. And if it is him, this is interesting. So she's saying, no, it's not blood. And he says, prove it. And then she doesn't respond. So he says, I didn't think you could. And then the person responds with like a your mom joke, and Kohberger doesn't respond. But it's just interesting how, somebody's saying it's not blood. And then the person who wants to argue back is this Papa Roger account. Prove it. Like he wants very much for people to think that it is blood, or he's under the impression maybe that he knows personally that, yep, that's blood. You could take it that way, just like he knew about the sheath being left behind before it was announced to the public in the affidavit. It's still these kind of interesting comments. So I wanted to share that with you guys because I just thought, even though it wasn't a post, because we read through some of his posts, this was a comment on somebody else's post. And I just still think that it's interesting and relevant considering that's blood. And he's so...
I know there's a lot of sort of true crime folks.
So now we're going to get into the Dr. Drew episode and podcast. So I'm just going to sit back and play this because I do want to play the Court TV one, and we're already at 32 minutes. So let's play this. Thank you all for being here. Hit like if you haven't done so. And thanks again, everyone, for listening.
Following this one around, we're going to see if we can understand what happened and what this profile is of a guy that could commit such an awful thing.
And like I said, I've added in other clips too. So it's not just Dr. Drew and his guests speaking. It's a compilation of corroborated statements and everything else that kind of goes in with their conversation. Okay, guys?
Even the bits that we've gotten in the affidavit tell so much about this guy before and after he did this attack.
A short time later, DM said she heard who she thought was Goncalves say something to the effect of, "There's someone here."
And I think when you look at what he did and what he carried out that day and the way that he did it, we have evidence of him actually doing, not quite to that extent, but in Pennsylvania at a brewery where he would go and ask them questions that were so odd, his behavior was so odd that they actually had warnings for all, when he would scan in with his license, they had warnings that would come up on the computers for the bartenders to watch out for this guy because he was so odd. And when they confronted him, the manager confronted him, he denied it, of course, and then he left, never came back. So I think first and foremost, what we see with this guy is that that night when he did these brutal killings, it was very fast. Very fast, he got in there, and I think there was some turmoil going in there with the one girl who just got in a DoorDash and the other girl who recognized him. And he did what any predator that's not on the highest hierarchy of predators, he got out of there as fast as he could. When things didn't go his way, or up to the point where things didn't go his way, he was killing. But then when he was discovered, he got out of there. And so his behavior before shows us kind of his mindset. And then afterwards, I think he was having a oh crap moment where he realized he left his knife sheath behind. And then he was trying to change the license plates on his car. And then he got out of there with his dad. I think he was really starting to realize that he was in a really bad situation. He was going to get caught probably.
So I got a bunch of questions. First, I'm going to clarify what you meant by the highest hierarchy of killer. That's
Right.
not something I'm familiar with. What is that hierarchy?
So that's something that I came up with because in the book I talk about predators, and if you look at a lion, and a lion has just killed something, and you disturb that lion, it is going to look at you and either come at you or it's just going to stand its ground. But if, like I live in Arizona, so if you see coyotes and they're killing something, and you come up on them with a flashlight, they're probably going to scamper away. Or if you see a child who goes in and is told not to get cookies out of a cookie jar, and they're in there and they get caught, they're going to deny it. They'll lie right to you, So I think there's a hierarchy of this predatory scale. This is my own scale of how these predators react. And a good example of that, if there was in New York City, it was about 6 months ago, I believe, there was an FDNY lieutenant, I think she was female, coming out of a deli, and a guy knocks her down on the ground, jumps on her and stabs her. There's people walking up, cars driving up. He looks at him just like the lion and just keeps stabbing her until he's done, and then he leaves. So you see a difference here between somebody who doesn't want to get caught and somebody who either wants to get caught or doesn't care. And so in the case with mass shooters as well, they will stand their ground and end up killing themselves because they want to be seen. They want to be seen as dominant. This guy wants to be seen as dominant, but he wants to be seen in secret over the people that he can be dominant. And then if he gets caught, he's out of there.
And there were, in addition to the odd behavior at the bars, I heard that he, in class, was someone who generally was sort of intrusive and asked a lot of questions, except about the Idaho murders when that came up in the classroom. I saw that. And then number two, that people reported him seeing less uptight after the murders, like calmer. Is that something?
So Detective Juan, thank you. Yes, that is true. Male lions actually have their food killed for them by the females. The lionesses go out and they bring the food back. Learn that from Lion King. But yeah, that's a good point. And yes, Dr. Drew, he has a lot of good input. So I'm tolerating this other guy. I know you guys recognize his voice. I didn't put his name or face on the screen for a reason. But honestly, I felt like they had a good conversations back and forth, and I did edit a lot of what this guy had to say out because it was irrelevant to the case. But yeah, I hope you guys like this conversation. And like I said, I will edit in parts that kind of are relevant to their discussion. Like at one point they discussed his father and him and the dynamic between them driving across country, and I put in the edited version that I had done of their traffic stop where I tried my best to take out the traffic noise, etc. So we are going to revisit that traffic stop. So make sure your volume isn't up too high because I did increase the volume a little bit so we could hear. And good morning, Elaine, too, and everyone else who has joined us. Thanks for being here, everyone.
Usual from guys like this?
Yes, because he is. So here's the dilemma that he's in right now. I think he realized that there's a chance he could get caught. He knows that the girl saw him. And so he's worried about that. But at the same time, he is satiated. And once that satiation occurs, I guess it would be the same, I'm trying to think of what I could use as an example. But if you wanted something, I think drug addicts probably go through this a lot where they crave the drug. They know it's bad for them. And then when they actually get their fix, then there's a couple of moments, a moment where they get the high, a moment where they probably feel somewhat bad about what they did. And then after that, they reflect on that satiation, and that's what leads them to doing it again, is that they on how good that was. And I think in a lot of ways, these psychopathic, narcissistic, Machiavellian types of people, he's probably totally satiated and fixated on that at the same time where you and I would be losing it because we got caught. This guy, that's kind of in the background of his worry. He's maneuvering because he knows that doing something wrong will get him in trouble, but it's not ethically based. It's whether or not he can continue to do the things that he wants.
And in the 2020 episode on the case, the Dateline or whatever on Hulu, they said something about, or they had a student, you know how he was a TA? They had one of the students on there, and he was saying how he was very strict before the killings happened with grading, etc. And then afterward, he was in like a better mood, and he was more giving good feedback to students and giving good grades to them. And they showed on the 2020 episode a message that Bryan had wrote one of the students, and it was after the murders took place and after he graded his stuff, and he wrote congratulating him and said something along the lines of like supporting him being an officer someday, like you'd make a great law enforcement officer, blah blah blah. So it was like strange that he's like encouraging this student to become a cop, and he's over here sitting on this huge secret. It's just interesting, like the whole dynamic of how he acted afterwards.
You mentioned drugs here, and we know that he had a history with heroin, which I find weird. I've never seen drug addicts, so I've never known a drug addict to engage in this kind of behavior. Do you think, I'm just wondering what the relationship is between obviously meth addicts will do crazy things and kill people, but that's in sort of an impulsive manic state. But I don't see the cold-blooded Machiavellianism associated with drug addiction per se, or am I just not getting exposed to that?
No, I don't really see that either. And I don't think that this was related to his drug addiction. I think his drug addiction was related to what happened to him when he was young. It appears that, he's obviously got parents, because his dad drove all the way to flew to Washington State, got in a vehicle that he knows, unless he lives in a cave, that law enforcement is looking for 15 minutes from where these murders occurred, and still got in the car and drove with him back to Washington State. How you doing?
How y'all doing today? Good. Take a look at your driver's license real quick if I could. See, he's right up on that van, man. He was right up on the back end of that van. Pulled you over for tailgating. Is this your car? Okay. Cool. Where are you headed?
Well, we're coming from WSU, and we're scanning early.
What's WSU?
University, basically. They were listening to this incident that was occurring with the shooting incident. That is SWAT team and everything.
So I'm having a hard time hearing you because of the traffic. So you're coming from Washington State University? Yeah. And you're going where?
We're going to be going to Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're slightly punchy because we're driving for hours.
Hours, days.
Good driving. Well, almost a day.
Okay. And what did you say about some SWAT team thing? Or
there was a man shooting and everything.
Where?
This was
Interesting.
Well, it's horrifying because he's supposed to be university, you know what I mean?
So y'all work at the university there?
I actually do work there.
Oh.
PhD in criminal.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't heard about that incident. Just yesterday, or?
This happened this morning. About an hour and a half ago. We're still wrapping it up for investigating. I'm not sure there's two shooters because they did shoot somebody.
I see.
And then
you don't know about that. They were apparently shooting out of the window or something. Interesting. Wow. Okay. So do me a favor, don't follow too close, okay? All right. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Doting parents, if you take a person who's very, very bright and you have parents that dote on them, and then they have this other traumatic experience, like he was fat and he was bullied and these types of things happened. I think the heroin addiction probably came from him dealing with these types of things, but the heroin addiction was just a temporary fix.
So that's how I know for a fact he was using. I've got high with him a couple times and used with him. And, you know, I knew other people that dealt drugs and we would deliver drugs to him a lot. And he didn't have many friends, so he would do anything to fit in. You know, he just wanted to be liked by everybody.
And I think somewhere along the way, he had this deviation where killing or dominating and some type of thing was coming out. As he lost weight, that got more and more profound in his life. And that's why I don't think that drugs would really solve his issue. He may get a high out of it, but his desire is domination and potentially to kill. And I think that goes what you see with a lot of these serial killers. They've had substance abuse problems, but I think we found one thing that does not, that heroin can't fix or can't give you enough of a high, which is taking a human life. And if that's your desire, you're going to eventually do that.
I don't, in my world, I don't deal with criminals. So this is always in the criminality is correct me if I'm wrong, but I experience at least as a separate phenomenon from mental health issues. They cross over, they coexist together, but criminality per se has its own sort of logic to it, let's say, or own good experience associated with it. And do we think, other than character problems, personality disorders, dark triad, do we think there's anything else going on with this guy? You said trauma, like something happened in childhood. It makes me wonder if some of this dominating kinds of behavior is really directed towards women and the men just get taken out incidentally.
That could be, but I will say this one thing about, I always tell people when they have a hard time perceiving the way that this individual thinks and kind of getting in that mindset. I think with this guy, and we see this with Jeffrey Dahmer, we see this with Ted Bundy, with a lot of these people, is that it may not be that easy to pinpoint where that switch was.
Tom says he used to be around 300 pounds, then lost a lot of weight, and that wasn't the only difference.
My son said he changed a little bit and he got pretty aggressive with him and mean to him and stuff.
But with these people, a lot of the times, I think they just have a predatory nature. And when you get the mix of all these things just right, it's just a darker desire. It's not so much of an addiction as it is their physical desire. I like women. I likes to kill women. I mean, so that becomes his. Some people it's sexual, some people it is just pure domination, and it kind of replaces that sexual urge. I know the Green River Killer, I think that's who it is. Well, this has happened with several people, but where they have killed women and went back and had sexual relations with their dead and decomposing bodies because they could relive. It wasn't as much as the sex as it was the domination.
My wife went to school with him. They graduated together, and she doesn't remember him ever having a girlfriend, and I don't remember him ever having a girlfriend.
And I think what we'll see with this guy is when they get into the interviewing and interrogating, if he decides to confess so that he can get a plea or something like that, you're going to start to see a guy that plays games with law enforcement, and then he starts to relive what he did through this whole fame game. And I foresee that happening quite potentially.
And you also suggest that he has done this before.
I would think.
DM stated she opened her door a second time when she heard what she thought was crying from Kernodle's room. DM then said she heard a male voice say something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you."
This was a brutal weapon. It sounds like it was a professional type weapon that couldn't break. And they weren't stab wounds. They were like large punctures.
There were stab wounds on the hands of at least one of the students that make it appear that it would be defensive wounds.
I mean, I can think back on a few people, maybe the Mansons. There might have been one or two people in there, that whole Manson group, that had never really killed before, and then that one night they killed, several people. So these instances do happen, but typically when somebody does this big of an attack, they have killed before, and this is an escalation. So they couldn't get any more fulfillment from just killing one person. That's why they start off with bullying or doing some type of Machiavellian type of what's the word I'm trying to get here, where they're very sadistic in the way that they manipulate people. So
he was always nice to me, maybe not to other people.
I didn't know that he was literally making me drive to get him heroin until Brandon told me. So, but yeah, this is also talking about, hanging out with Bryan, chilling with them. And then Brandon said they're like not friends anymore. And this happened a lot because of what he was doing, his addiction. And he had some anger issues. I know he did kickboxing, kind of help with that. But
so at first it's manipulation, and then it turns into power, where they'll kill an animal or hurt an animal. And then they'll go over to where they'll manipulate people more and hurt them mentally. And so there's this escalation of what their desire tells them that they need. It
escalates.
Computer looking at certain things, it escalates.
No, you're right. And it makes me wish and wonder at the same time that we have a better neurobiological explanation for this, because it has a flavor of behavioral addictions. And oftentimes what throws sort of the rocket fuel on the behavioral addictions is previous chemical addiction. So it becomes more and more difficult to get the satisfaction of the behavioral addiction. So they come in at a pretty high level, and then it escalates from there. So the heroin sort of blunts permanently blunts some of the satisfaction. It makes me wonder if that had some role in what's going on here. It's very odd. It's very bizarre. It is so hard to get my head around. I know for you, it's like me with addiction. Like I get it. And for what you're going to say, I'll let you ask, Jonathan.
Well, I think, first of all, when it comes to criminals, as strange as it may sound, just like somebody wants to get up in the mornings and have a cigarette. And for somebody like me, I'm a health guy. I couldn't even imagine that desire at all, but people do that. Yeah. That's the first thing they think about. Yeah. Some people think about porn more than they think about going out with somebody. And I think with somebody like this, what's interesting is that as dangerous it is, it just happens so rarely that the entire psychological community doesn't really look at this. And I got to tell you, Dr. Drew, working around criminals for many, many years, and watching people in all these different career fields and functioning as a trained killer, as a Navy SEAL, one thing that I've seen is that, people will get themselves into a position, they'll deviate and they'll go down a road where they will literally wake up in the mornings and think, how am I going to, go about killing this person or shaking this person down for money? Where they wake up, it's like Lex Luthor and Superman. Superman wakes up to see what he can do good. Lex Luthor wakes up to see what he can do bad. And that actually exists in the world. And when you add to that a psychological deviation, they go down some very dark paths where they have no conscience at all, no empathy, no concern about life at all.
Do they have concerns about their own well-being, or do they just not even care about that?
They do, but in a different way. Whereas, you have an ethical concern about how you are to other people. You're concerned about, you understand that you could get hurt, or that if this occurs, you're going to go to jail and your life will be over. I think you look at Bernie Madoff, he's a perfect example. Bernie Madoff really didn't have any concerns about anything except not getting caught, because it wouldn't allow him to do that. And then when he did get caught, he went to jail and he became a superstar in jail, up until he died. He was the guy who did everybody's taxes and gave everybody financial advice. And they said he reveled in that. So these people do not look at life the same way that we do. It's much more animalistic. And I think what it basically comes down to is somehow, some way, the human part of who we are has taken a backseat to the animalistic person that we are.
Yeah, you've brought up animal sort of models a couple of times, and I find it sort of chilling. So it suggests a certain part of the brain is sort of shut down, which we do know happens in psychopathic personalities. So it is sort of that confluence of psychopathy and trauma and the right kind of parents. What do you think is going on with that dad? Speaking of the right kind of parents, does he think he's saving his son from being caught? Is he just an unwitting dupe of this manipulative kid, or what do we think? But parents are a little different. They already are disposed to kind of protect the kids. They sort of easily manipulated.
Right. But I think what happens is kind of some of what you get with the abused wife is that these parents see this odd behavior for so long and they want to fix it to the point where they try to justify everything that he's did. Oh, it wouldn't be him. He's a good kid. He's extremely smart. And what's interesting is when you look at, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, BTK, Green River Killer, this guy, what you see are people that, from a parent standpoint, are church-going people, are calm and have a full-time job. This guy is a PhD student. So the parents, it would never register in their head, and it'd be very difficult for them to register in their head that their kid did something like that.
And I knew his father worked for the school, and I believe his mother did too. But his family, they were all nice people, and his dad was always really nice to me, very polite.
They were intoxicated. I mean, I think these women were intoxicated. Most of the people, I don't know about the roommate, but you can see it on camera that Maddie and Kaylee, they were intoxicated. The other two, Zana and Ethan, had been at a party all night. So I think that played a huge role in this, that the victims were intoxicated, and people just do not have a good grasp, and it's understandable, of what a knife attack is actually like. It's not like the movies. Knife attacks are very lethal, and there's two things that can, with a knife, that can cause problems where people won't fight back. One is, if you get a severe stab wound to the lung, your lung could collapse, to the neck, or these places where your function in life, which is breathing, is disrupted. That's a major blow to a person who's never been injured or never been in a fight before. I mean, you're going from never being in a fight to now you're trying to fight for life. Also, hitting any artery, if you don't get a tourniquet on it, you're going to bleed out within a minute at the most. So you're looking at people that.
Now that part I think is kind of obvious, but to hear him say it is just crazy. Obviously he knows these type of scenarios, being a trained retired Navy SEAL, FBI agent, all that. If you're hitting an artery with a vein or with a knife, it's literally minutes. So just something to think about. Now, you guys know that I reference a federal law enforcement source who's active, not retired. But he was also a Marine before he joined his position that he's in now. So I had talked to him about the K-bar and, why do you think he left the sheath? And his opinion on it was he probably didn't have it buckled to his belt. And I said, is that how the Marines train you guys when you guys are, getting the K-bar training and all that? And he said, no, they train us with like plastic knives. Like they don't train them with real ones, but he just, in his opinion, felt that Bryan didn't have it hooked to his belt and that he had left it on accident. It seemed to me, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed to me like Chris McDonough from the interview room was almost toying around with the theory that has been going around that maybe it was planted there on purpose to throw off investigators. Maybe they would think that it was somebody from military background. I don't know if that was Chris's theory, but it did seem like maybe he was toying around with that concept. But either way, I feel, in my opinion, that it was left on accident. I don't know how you guys are feeling, but comment down below for replay, and in chat, let me know. And good morning, CDT. It's good to see you.
Woke up or were woken up or didn't wake up. They just a traumatic injury to their body instantly occurred. And this knife that he used is not my pick of knives that I use for anything. It's a old K-bar knife. They don't hold an edge well, so they don't stay sharp, and the point is prone to breaking off. However, it's a big knife, and if you hit somebody full force in the chest with it, there's just not a lot of fight that you can get back with that unless you will something up from inside and want to fight back like an animal. Most people, when they're hit with that much of a trauma to their chest or face, it's going to be the same as if I held you underwater. You're going to struggle, but if I can put some pressure on you, you're going to succumb to whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Jesus.
Was it one specific one of the women?
Well, we know, I think they know where he kind of rolled in and started. I believe he started upstairs, but I'm not comfortable saying that all these other analysts are going out there and they're saying, oh, he definitely targeted, Kaylee, or they found the knife sheath on Maddie, so maybe she was the target. But I don't know, with a person like this, who he has stalked that neighborhood 12 times before this night. So he was obviously interested in that neighborhood. He was obviously interested in that house. So I think that is something that will be determined down the road. And there's a lot of things they can do to determine that, like what's the severity of the attacks, because it's going to get less and less. It's a very exhausting thing to kill this many people with a knife. And but had he just gone in and the first person he encountered was Kaylee, for instance, and he attacked her, it wasn't necessarily a target. He just saw girls in there. She's going to have the most lethal wounds. So there may be something that comes out in his phone records that show that he was in the location of one or two of these people. And that is what will most likely lead them to determine who he was targeting, not the severity of the attack on the people inside the rooms.
Right. He had been around this house a couple times before, right? Like this is for some reason a target 12 times before. Yeah.
12 times.
What is your opinion on the surviving roommate who didn't call police until much later?
So I personally know 3 people who have had not circumstance where somebody was killing, but in one instance, a friend of mine, when she was younger, thought she heard something outside of her window, and she curled up into the covers, and then she just sat there frozen. She didn't realize, but 5 hours had passed before she came out of that position. Yeah. Another girl, I know that somebody broke into their house and.
See, this comment, Jules, is interesting. And a lot of people have been saying this. If you watch Police Off the Cuff, he has stated this, as well as Chris McDonough. Like, a lot of them have said just because there was no SA doesn't mean that there isn't a sexual element to this, which is, I don't know if you guys know the Amber Alert story about the little girl named Amber. I just watched the new special on Hulu last night, and they pretty much were saying the same thing. Like, there was no sign of SA on her, but she was found nude. And that was also a knife injury, fatality as well. They had said in that special, like, just because there was no SA, like, we can't say that this didn't have a sexual element to it. And now when you think about, DM states that she heard something upstairs around 4 a.m. and she thought that it was Kaylee playing with her dog. And then, we know for a fact that Xana is still alive at 4:12 because she's on TikTok commenting. So you have to think about, like you said, Jules, I wonder if the sexual component had something to do with him taking the belt off upstairs. Sexual attackers don't always touch the body. Now, we don't know if he had taken a belt off, but that's just something that, it's been in my mind too. It's not something that I always want to talk about because we just don't know. And they're stating that there was no SA. So I don't really feel the need to go down that avenue with huge theories, but it is something that I know that other retired law enforcement officers on YouTube and just talking heads have stated that, and just referencing the other cases. Like I said, it's just, SA is a crime of power and control. we just don't know, you know what I mean? Like what's going on, as far as if DM heard that at 4 a.m. and then Xana's still alive at 4:12. To me, like I know that the times in the affidavit are approximate, and we know that he was outside on a CCT camera at 4:04, you know, so we kind of have to consider all the times might be a little bit off. But at the same point, we just don't know like what was going on before and in between the killings. And we still don't know the order technically. So good morning, Tony. It's good to see you. She said, I feel he may have left the sheath on purpose to throw off law enforcement or left it to indicate Maddie was the target, in my opinion. Yeah, and you're not the only one who's thinking that for sure. Somebody had said something, who was it in chat? Somebody said something like maybe the knife was an extension. So reason why you use a knife for his penis is because you may be oh yes, yeah. Impotent? Is that what you're just saying? Or is that, sorry. I don't know. Okay, that's what you're saying. Got you. Yeah, Lady Sarah, I think, mentioned something about the knife possibly being an extension of something like that. Either way, you guys have good comments. I see them, but I want to get through this and I want to play a little bit of the court TV thing. So thank you guys for all your comments and all that. So thanks.
When they were standing in the living room, she actually, for some strange reason, ran towards them and into a corner and balled up in a corner. She doesn't know why. She did it and she just stayed there. It freaked the robber out so bad that he left. So, but in another case, a young girl, a friend of a friend, I didn't know this person, but they were in their sorority they were in, they were always talking about how she used to sleep with the covers pulled up over her head. And they're like, how do you do that? And it turns out when she was young, her and her family had been out. She came home and a guy came out of her closet, apparent home invasion, and he was hiding in her closet. And when she got in her bed, he came out of the closet and walked out of the house. And since that point, she slept with her head under the covers and she didn't tell anybody until the next morning. So, and even somebody who got kidnapped by Ted Bundy that survived him, she got away from him and never told anybody, even after it was in the news and she recognized him, and she could have probably stopped other murders. But this is a traumatic experience. I mean, this is something, I don't blame that girl. And I think she might have been intoxicated and she got frozen and went back in there and she didn't know, according to the affidavit, she didn't see the people getting murdered. So she probably thought the same thing. I'll go in there and hide and he'll go away. And she probably fell asleep or passed out.
And then Dr. Drew's going to give his take on DM. But since we're on this subject still, the comments in chat are, it's right along the lines of what CDT and I talk about privately when it comes to certain things on this case. And we just kind of questioned, like I had said earlier in chat, and we were discussing, about him never having a girlfriend. When you're in high school and you're entering college and you've never had a girlfriend, to me, that's not really abnormal. I've seen it before. I mean, all the boyfriends that I've dated had girlfriends in high school. So I and my brother had girlfriends in high school. So it's just kind of hard to understand, I can understand it, but the fact that he's up at 28 years old and people are saying, I've never seen him with a girl. That's where I'm kind of wondering if you're onto something here, Marshall Dove, with your comment. Now, I don't know much about this D'Angelo killer that you guys are referencing in chat, but they seem to be saying that he used the knife as an extension of his manhood because he had erectile dysfunction. And those are just private theories, but we're on the subject that CDT and I have just kind of bounced around with. We're not set on anything, I know. And we've just wondered, was there something along the lines of that with Bryan? They state that he was socially awkward. Well, was he awkward when it was one-on-one with a girl? You know what I mean? Could he only perform when he was by himself or something? You know what I mean? So that to me is a possible theory. And like Corey said, the knife is an extension of his manhood. That's the other thing, Sarah, is we were kind of wondering, and we don't know this stuff, guys, but it maybe will come out. We don't know. But did he have some sort of disfigurement? We don't know, but I think that it's fair to kind of wonder, especially if you guys are referencing D'Angelo. And this comment made me laugh so hard, Stephanie. All right, but yeah. Where did she go? Allegedly with Brittany J. I think that's why he returned at 9 a.m. that morning as well, to relive it and pleasure himself, possibly. I definitely think it's possible. And it's not the nicest subject, but I just think that it's something that we're kind of all wondering, 28 years old, never had this type of, no one has come forward. I'm sorry, I don't believe that Tinder girl. And even the Tinder girl, if she is true, who came forward, they didn't have any intimate relations, it sounds. So something must have gone off in her head too, like something's not clicking here. She stated that that's how she was feeling. She just wasn't vibing with him or whatever. But it annoys me that she's never shown messages with him. That to me is like, you don't really delete Tinder messages. Like, you just move on to the next message. It's like messages within the app. So there would be no need for her to hide those messages or delete them. I just don't get why she didn't show the messages. But either way, very interesting. No relationship at all. No one has come forward saying I dated him even for a month or 2 months. You know what I mean? Since we're on the subject of Fire Stick and apps, just because of the Tinder app, that was the other thing that I had written down about the Fire Stick. So we'd seen in the evidence inventory list that they had taken his Fire Stick. So that will show apps that he has. You can even go on TikTok on your Fire Stick. It'll show his accounts like Netflix and all the smart TV stuff that you guys have on your smart TV, everything like that. Then they can look into a search history. There's also a private internet browser on there. So you could check, everything that he was looking up through the Fire Stick app, as well as his download history. So very interesting to find that out when we do find out what was on there. No, it's don't apologize allegedly with Brittany J. I think that there's something to the conversation, and we've compared it to other killers. So I think that it's a valid point to bring up. And yeah, it's just like everything else in true crime. It's uncomfortable, or it is, and it isn't on some level, because it is intriguing and fascinating, and every little element we will find out about this guy. Now, were there rumors of that Wingbuster? I don't know. I think no evidence has surfaced about that. That to us is just theory. Okay, so moving on. And Dennis Richards, I won't even comment on that. It's not true.
People have this weird, I don't want to make waves kind of instinct. Like, I don't want to bother anybody. I don't want to bother the cops. I don't want to accuse somebody of something. It's a weird instinct we have. And then you add this sort of bystander effect onto that, and then we just don't do much.
We even saw this to a different extent in the Vegas shooting. I think is an excellent example of this. A guy starts shooting people with a gun, and a gun compared to a firecracker is totally different. But what did people assume? They assumed that it was fireworks. And so it's similar in the way that people are not programmed to think, oh, that person is in my house right now with a mask on. So when they see it, they are so traumatized that they freeze with fear. And that's why I wrote that book.
Yeah, I love your book, Sheep No More. I don't know how you train or coach people up not to freeze. I mean, freeze is it's an old primitive survival instinct when there's nothing else left. And unfortunately, it doesn't work very well. It's not, it's sort of preparing for strike rather than preparing for fight.
Right. This is exactly because we're not prepared for it. So it doesn't take much. You can prepare yourself by forward thinking these things. Doesn't mean you're going to be paranoid or constantly looking behind your back, but thinking to yourself, how would I react in this situation? And I think if people just did that.
Yeah. It feels more like personal domination. Like
Okay, so thank you everyone who has joined us. Thank you, Tom N, for your super chat. If he wore the sheath proper on his belt, it would not be at the scene. I agree that the rapid stabbing can represent his rod. I think he came for Kaylee only. Everyone else was collateral damage. That is definitely a good theory. I could definitely see all that being true. And thank you again for the super chat. And hello, Caroline. Oh, yeah, I don't know. That's why I tried not to bring that comment up on the screen, but it's good to see you. So let me just switch up to the Court TV segment. And actually, before I bring that up, let me just look at my notes to make sure. Okay, so here's the thing too. Remember December 13th, we learned in the affidavit that his car was seen on a license plate reader in Colorado. Why was he in Colorado? Can anyone answer that? Because I just don't understand. Let me just look at these notes too. So I'm wondering the dog hair that they found. We're all wondering, is that Murphy? I've seen people state, oh, Murphy is a hypoallergenic dog. They don't shed. They have hair. They don't shed fur. That's correct. And when you pet them, like you won't look at your hand and see like hair, like some dogs do. But like everyone who has hair, it falls out throughout the day. So, the fact that they have a dog hair and that the dog doesn't shed because it's hypoallergenic, they still have hair. So I just feel like that needs to be kind of squashed, as like people are trying to say like, no, it couldn't be Murphy's because he's hypoallergenic. Like, so also I wanted to know, and I brought up in my notes, in one of the early interviews with Xana's father, he said something along the lines of she was just hanging out with her boyfriend. Do you guys remember that? Or CDT, if you're still here, do you remember that? He was like, she was just home hanging out with her boyfriend. So I just bring that up again in my mind because I'm wondering, was he awake? Was he not awake? And I know that that's sort of been bounced around in theories. So I'm just curious, you know what I mean? Did the father say that they were just hanging out because he ordered DoorDash too? You know what I mean? Was he awake? That's a lot of stuff that people want to know. And if Papa Rogers is Bryan, Papa Rogers stated something in the comments about there was a lot of blood in the kitchen and all that information is being suppressed or something along those lines. We visited it in the last live stream. So I'm just curious what took place in the kitchen. A lot of people are thinking something took place in the kitchen. So I don't know, just something to remember and all that. But let's see. And again, we still want to know who skinned that dog that took place like weeks before the murders. So, and the dog's name was Buddy. Remember that? I think that that's noteworthy. So yeah, the computer will show, his bank statements, everything that was seen in the affidavit or in the search warrant. They'll find a way to link it to, the black clothing that DM seen, were those receipts, something like that. Okay, CDT does remember. I do. The way he stated it was odd, in my opinion. It's hard to tell how exactly he meant it. Yes. I need to find that quote, but he does say something like she was just home hanging out with her boyfriend. So I don't know, guys. We'll figure that out. Yeah, they were in for the night. Something like that, allegedly, with Brittany J is saying. So, and yes, when I had said something in chat about him being addicted, that was back in 2011, 2013-ish time. So maybe that does explain a little bit of why he didn't have a girlfriend also in high school. Obviously, he was dealing with other things, in and out of rehab is what we heard too. Oh, yes. Thank you, Boz UK, for reminding me. I didn't add that to my notes, but I wanted to thank everybody for sending birthday wishes to my little one. Our last live stream, I said it was her birthday, and then all of a sudden people were sending me cash apps for a pizza party and all that. So thank you guys so much. It was a really good weekend, and that's why I kind of waited till Thursday to go live today, because I was just kind of recuperating from our parties and all that. So thank you so much, everyone who donated to the little one's pizza party. Yeah, I remember it being in the night, something about pizza. we need to revisit that. But either way, all right, let me play the court TV stuff. If I find stuff in my notes that I want to discuss, then I will definitely pause on it. Oh yeah, that was the other thing. So speaking of black clothing, that they're hoping to maybe link to these Marshall's receipts that we've seen in the search warrant, in the Walmart receipt, maybe they're looking for the black clothing that DM saw. The other thing that I had noted was, didn't the doctor's office, remember he went to his doctor's appointment that he had scheduled, I don't know why he scheduled it, but it was already scheduled. And he went to it after the murders, and they were talking about how chipper and talkative he was and all that. Didn't they say something in there in CDT, allegedly with Brittany J chat, help me out, that he was wearing a black North Face jacket? I just wanted to note that, just because, you know, DM states she's seen somebody in black. Not saying it's the same. I'm just saying it's interesting if he was in a black North Face jacket. So this is a court TV segment. I don't know. I'll try to get through it with you guys, but I don't like to go too much over an hour and a half.
Of the accused mass murderer. And tonight, we'll go through the evidence piece by piece with our own experts. Will prosecutors be able to connect the defendant to the scene of the crime?
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you for joining us here on Closing Arguments. The case in Idaho, this is not a case with direct evidence. There is no eyewitness to the actual murders. There's a witness who sees someone afterwards, but doesn't witness the actual murders. There's no video of the murders, and there's no confession. So what do we have? We've got video. We've got video of the suspect's car circling around the area outside of that house, going back and forth. We've got that car visiting before the murders as well. So the white Elantra and the video of the white Elantra, crucial piece of circumstantial evidence for prosecutors to try to get that suspect from Pullman, Washington into Moscow, Idaho. Second crucial piece, those cell phone pings, pinging everywhere. Those cell phone pings, sometimes coinciding with the video, other times pinging when there is no video, and sometimes we have video when there are no pings. But you put these pieces together, it's like a puzzle, circumstantial evidence. How many times have you heard a prosecutor talk about the pieces of the puzzle that you've got to put together to prove the case? So the cell phone, again, is circumstantial evidence. It can prove that someone is there, or the cell phone is there. And then you're gonna say, well, the cell phone's there, and then he's there, and we see his car there. So you put all of that together, you're like, okay, now all of a sudden you've got this defendant not home in his apartment, but you've got him out of his apartment. You've got him in Moscow. You've got him right next to the home where the 4 college students were murdered. So what else do you need? You can get him outside the house, right? So that's important, to get him in the neighborhood. It's a college town. You know, there's a lot of people moving around, people seeing things, people, you know, driving in, driving out for different reasons. But he's from Pullman, Washington. Does he have a reason to be outside the house? Now, something we've learned, 2 people survived who were inside the house. We know there was a DoorDash delivery as well. So you now have to get this defendant inside that house. And how do you do that? How do you prove to this jury that he's actually inside the home? Again, more circumstantial evidence, evidence of circumstances that say, okay, you put it together, that would put him there.
Thank you, Tom N, for the super chat. The red stained pillow sounds interesting. They say the victims' faces were clean and preserved. Did he cover their face while stabbing? Did he take a pillow? Interesting. Yeah, Chris McDonough kind of was wondering about the pillow thing too. Like, was that his or was it a victim's? And he was saying if it's the victim's, then, you know, Bryan's screwed even more so. Yeah, that's just interesting, the pillow aspect. I agree. And is it his blood from the fight, you know, and then he bleeds through his own pillows? You know, it could be that as well. But thank you so much for the super chat.
And I think what was unsealed today in a search warrant could lead investigators there, could get the prosecution there, could get the jury there to be convinced that, yeah, this defendant, this suspect was inside that home and has a connection to these victims. So today, an unsealing of a search warrant, and part of that is a list of the items that were actually seized. So let's take a look at some of these items. We begin with one.
We listed the items earlier in chat too. Give me 1 second to just touch on a little bit of stuff in the chat. I know that people get upset when people talk about DM. Ultimately, DM is part of the case, but I feel like there's a lot to the case that we don't even need to discuss DM. Now, she's going to be a victim and she's probably dealing with survivor's guilt. I believe that the affidavit didn't state everything that took place. So there's a lot we don't know. We don't have the 911 call. I understand that. And we definitely want to hear that. But I just feel like there's a lot to discuss where we don't even have to mention DM. And she will be called as a witness and she needs our support. You know, she's gave a good description of the perpetrator that night. And regardless of what she did, what she didn't do, I understand there's a lot of discussion and curiosity and just bewilderment. And I will say I'm baffled why she didn't call 911 too. But again, it's just a small aspect to everything else that we should kind of focus on, guys. So I know people just get annoyed when people are wondering why she didn't call 911. And I totally understand both sides, but ultimately she needs our support and she saw what she saw. She might not have done what we all would have done, but we don't know because we weren't there or in her position. So let's just kind of ease up a little bit. But at the same time, I want to say that I do question things too, but ultimately she needs support and she gave what she gave, and hopefully the information that she did give investigators when she did will be enough to get a conviction and justice for her roommates.
Nitrite type black glove. Black glove, that's kind of like a surgical glove. I mean, if you're going to commit a murder, that's something you would certainly want. You've got a Walmart receipt with one Dickies tag. We don't know what's on the receipt, but is he buying something that could be connected to all of this? 2 Marshall's receipts. Again, we don't know what's on the receipt, but investigators do. This one is fascinating. A dust container from a Bissell Power Force vacuum. Again, inside the suspect's home. Was he cleaning anything up? What would be inside that vacuum? 8 possible hair strands. Whose hair? Whose hair? Will they be able to match someone to these hair strands? And could they possibly match it to one of the victims? There would be no innocent reason for one of the victim's strands of hair to be in his apartment, would there? A Fire TV stick with a cord and plug. This one, I don't have a Fire TV stick, but my understanding is you can store information on there. You can go shopping on Amazon. There's other things you can do with it. Maybe you can look up news reports as well. I don't know what information they'll be able to get from that, but seems like it's significant. This one, wow, one possible animal hair strand. Did he have a pet? One of the victims had a pet. One possible hair, another possible hair, and another possible hair. If any of these match those victims, huge for the prosecution. Computer tower, we know the age we live in. There's so much potential information from a computer tower. What are you searching? What are you looking at? What are you reading? How about?
Thank you, Deco Painter and T. This is just something that I believe too, considering my conversation with somebody who was trained with a K-bar knife in the Marines and who is now the federal law enforcement source that we discuss here in this channel, basically said it's a brutal weapon. It's meant for killing. It's very durable. Even Kaylee's father said it sounded like a professional type weapon that didn't break. So I 100% agree with this statement, sadly, even though we might never know the actual truth, but I would tend to agree with this comment. Even if she called 911 right away, it wouldn't have made a difference in their survival. They were gone before he left each room, considering the horrific attacks and considering the spots where they were stabbed, upper chest or upper body area and in the chest. So it is what it is. There's nothing we can do now but support somebody who is going to be a key witness in this. And her statement is valid and valuable, I should say, valuable. So thank you, everyone, for being here as well. So hit like if you haven't done so already, and I will continue this Courts TV segment. So thanks for being here.
Social media, What pictures are you browsing? Where are you? When are you there? When are you in your apartment? When are you not there? Unbelievable information from a computer. Then we've got 3 more things. A collection of a dark red spot collected without testing. Red spot, is it blood? Whose blood is it? 2 cuttings from an uncased pillow of reddish brown stain. The larger stain has been tested. We don't know the results. 2 top and bottom mattress cover packaged separately, both labeled C, multiple stains. What are the stains? Who are they connected to? I'm telling you, folks, this could be enormous for the prosecution. They already have great evidence, but you don't know what any particular jurors, their own concept of what a reasonable doubt is. And if they can't put the defendant inside that house, that could be the reasonable doubt for 1 or more jurors. So it's significant. Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter. Not in Idaho tonight, but right here on set. Great to see you, Chanley.
Tonight,
and
inside.
warm. Exactly. So tell us more about these documents that were unsealed today. This is big.
It was huge, Vinny, because remember last week on your show, I'm telling you about the order to seal this affidavit of the apartment, and we were speculating what all it could reveal to us that they were looking for inside the apartment. And now we have our hands on most of it. And the reason they unsealed this yesterday, according to the file stamp, is because it's a different state, Washington State, Whitman County, where his apartment is, in Moscow. They cited the Moscow affidavit, the arrest affidavit, being so extensive, 18 pages, that this really didn't, it's pretty much known what is in this affidavit. So they released it. And as it's unsealed, we learned that they were looking on December 30th, where we have video of the Washington State University Police Department searching the apartment on the 2nd floor, Unit 201, taking boxes out from that apartment, spending time doing that at the request of Moscow Police Department, looking for, like what you said, trace evidence, cell phone, other cell phones, computers, digital towers, things like that. But now, I told you about the first 18 pages. This affidavit goes page 19 through 31. So here's some things that stick out to me that we maybe didn't know. So on page 19, where it picks up with something new, it says the Keene Road residence contained a significant amount of blood from the victims, including spatter and cast off, which is the bloodstain pattern resulting from blood drops released from an object, a murder weapon, due to its motion, which, based on the training of this officer, makes it likely that this evidence was transferred onto Kohberger's person, his clothing, or his shoes. So that's why we're seeing these items seized of clothes at his home, the receipts of clothes purchased possibly that he may have worn. Dickies, they make bibs that covers most of your body, right? That could have been what he purchased.
I didn't see any. Jesse Lynn asked, did they still have Ethan's injuries redacted? I didn't see anything on this that looked like there was redactions. Now, again, we theorize that maybe it was redacted because they're keeping information private, only the killer knows about and the investigators know about. So they weren't going to release it publicly because it would give less leverage as far as like stuff they know and all that. You guys understand, like with interviewing Bryan and all that. Now, I asked and I sent the affidavit to my source and I said, what do you make of this? Is this redacted for because they're keeping information back? His opinion was, OMG, you guys will look for anything to be a conspiracy. And he said something along the lines like they'd probably just put redacted on there because they accidentally printed a blank sheet. And by the time the courts look at it, they're going to be thinking, what is this about? So he just thought that it was a printing mistake, which was what Bryan Enton was told. Again, I don't know. We don't know. I think that it could still go either way. I think it could be maybe they were holding back a little bit of information in regards to Ethan. But again, it could just be something like, yeah, they made a mistake and they put the word redacted on there. And that was just to explain the courts why there was a blank page or something like that. I can't remember exactly what he was saying, but he was pretty much saying like, oh my gosh, you guys will look for anything. And it's like we overthink and we overanalyze, but sometimes it's for good reason. So time will tell about that redaction for sure.
So they're looking for, and we knew it was a bloody crime scene, right? I showed you what we presumed to be blood leaking out the walls outside.
Yeah. Shocking.
So a couple other things that stood out to me in this affidavit. So we knew that he was a student there, but we didn't know for sure based on his cross-country trip to Pennsylvania with his dad if he intended to do the spring semester, return to school. That's a long drive.
Right.
So this affidavit does say that he intended to return
He was going to stay.
He was going to stay.
He was going to stay right in Washington.
For the next semester. This is what this affidavit reads. Also revealing to me, Vinny, they did not find a murder weapon in this apartment. And with the gag order, we don't know if they found it. They wouldn't tell us, but we can know for sure that at the time this search warrant was written, they didn't have it, and then they didn't seize it there. They didn't find it. So that's still missing. We knew he lived alone, but this confirms he lived alone. I was at that apartment building knocking on neighbors' doors. We pretty much knew that. And you mentioned pet hair. There's no mention of a pet from any of the neighbors I talked to. And I think there'd be more than just one hair if there was actually a pet living
If there was
there.
a pet there, and there'd be a pet, right? I mean, when he's arrested or there'd be a pet in that room, in that apartment.
Exactly. So, and then something else, this search warrant also requests to search his office on campus. His apartment's on campus too, but at the criminology building.
Can I just say we knew about this before. We talked about it here. They searched his parents' home, his car, his office, and his apartment. So that, and good morning, Alex Erickson. It's good to see you. And anyone, Brittany J, CDT, if you're here, Alex, let chat know if you're going live and what time later in the day so that we can go over there and moderate the chats there and talk there.
I've been there and did some sleuthing. We went inside the building. We tried to find his office, Vinny. It's in the basement, but the outer door was locked, but you could see kind of through where the students' offices would be located. So they searched that, but this doesn't reveal anything that they seized from that search in this particular unsealed document. And then finally, I know we talked about this last week. I was interested to see if this mentioned or seized any shoes because of that latent footprint or shoe print that was found at the crime scene. Were they looking for him to have that style of shoe? It's not specifically mentioned in here, and they didn't seize, obviously, any shoes.
Yeah. I mean, if they saw a shoe that matched, they would have seized it. And unless their shoes were found somewhere else, which I couldn't imagine, or were they the shoes that he was wearing when he was arrested?
True.
Shoes could be where the murder weapon is as well.
Exactly.
You know, which could be pretty much anywhere.
And what was bought on the receipts or at the stores.
Exactly. So those receipts are crucial, and they know what's on the receipt, but we don't know what's on the receipt. So, you know, you look at this. What are your thoughts about the Fire Stick and the TV? That was the only one that's a little confusing.
I don't have one of those either, but I hear that you can do many things with this. Search the internet.
And we listed off already what the Fire Sticks can do. There's a private internet browser. Everything as far as apps will be on there. TikTok as well could be on there. So now, again, a lot of his searches on his internet can be almost explained from his criminology studies. You know, like he could easily say, well, that's because I study criminology and blah, 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 you know. So it's just going to be very interesting to see how everything is explained once we see what comes up and stuff like that, his records and his search history.
With it, you know, watch things, store things with it. Even illegal things I've researched, maybe you can download.
Right.
I'm not sure, but that's interesting. Who knows what they could find on that? And as we know, they can also find deleted things on a lot of these electronics as well.
Which, again, I mean, he's studying this stuff. He's probably going to try to cover his tracks, but you know, everything we're looking at, he didn't do the greatest job. Exactly. If in fact he is the killer here, because everything seems to be pointing in that direction. And it all started with the video, the cell phone. And now we'll see what they were able to get. It'll be interesting to see if there's any blood or hair that is connected to any of the victims that could have been brought back from the scene. All right, Chanley, great job. It's great that she can be warm tonight, and we will speak again. When we come back, folks, we are going to go through this evidence piece by piece with our experts, our forensic experts, our investigators, to get a better idea of what it could actually lead to, what it could mean, and again, answer the ultimate question. Could it put this defendant in contact with one or more of the victims? We've got all that, plus coming up next hour.
like for Dutch Bros or Target. So like knowing it was just like right down the road, like 10 minutes, that I go there like once or twice a week, it like made me like less willing to go out there. Like I would have to like go out there with somebody. I think he like actually lives really close to my apartment, so that even felt like even more scary.
Yeah, that's really scary when an accused mass murderer lives close to your apartment, the man that everyone was looking for. Well, now he's in custody, and today the search warrant and the probable cause affidavit attached to that search warrant and the items seized from his apartment was unsealed. Unsealed. So I want to go through these pieces of evidence with my experts. Let me bring in my guests. Joining me tonight in Columbia, South Carolina.
I agree, Jesse Lynn. I think his car is going to hold a lot. And so what are we to assume? He drove cross country before he cleaned it? Or do you think he did an extra cleaning job once he got there? Because it'll be interesting if there are people who witnessed him cleaning it while he was still in Washington, but we haven't heard about any of that coming out publicly yet. Tom N said this knife is a lot bigger than people think. I have a knife like this. What is your email? I'll send you a comparison pic that shows how big the knife is. I put my email in my info, like on my homepage, ambrd06@gmail. And thank you so much for the super chat. And yes, hit that like button, guys. And yeah, the knife, yeah, it is much bigger than I thought it was. And that's true. I am Bond 007 says it's not how big your knife is, it's how you use it. All right. Extra cleaning when he got home. His OCD tendencies make me think even more so. And remember, on the search warrant, they collected stuff from his vacuum. And we heard the neighbor saying that he was always vacuuming at night, etc. So the vacuum contents will be important for sure. And we'll see how smart he is.
Retired medical examiner, forensic pathologist, former law enforcement.
Okay, we've seen this guy before. I recognize the background. Look at him on the left there. It's like, I can't even look at those notebooks.
Officer Dr. Michelle Dupree. We're just connecting up with her in just a second. In Oceanside, New York, Professor Emeritus of Forensic Science at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, Dr. Lawrence Kobylinski. And in Salt Lake City, Utah, private investigator Jason Jensen. Great to have you both here. Dr. Dupree will be with us in just a second. Let me begin with the first three items on the list. You've got one nitrite-type black glove, one Walmart receipt with one Dickies tag, two Marshall's receipts, and then I want to remind everyone what's in this probable cause affidavit. As Chanley reported to us, the King Road residence contained a significant amount of blood from the victims, including spatter and cast-off bloodstain pattern resulting from blood drops released from an object due to its motion, which, based on my training, makes it likely that this evidence was transferred to the defendant's person, clothing or shoes. Also, the detected shoe print showed a diamond-shaped pattern similar to the pattern of a Vans type shoe sole just outside the door of Dylan's bedroom located on the second floor. All right, Dr. Kobylinski, let's begin with that black glove. This, again, is not found at the scene, but is found, and Dr. Dupree is with us. Great to see you. And this is not found at the scene, Dr. K, but it's found at the apartment of the suspect. What could possibly be on that black nitrate glove, and how difficult would it be to get evidence from it? I'm not hearing Dr. K. Is he muted? Are we muted? We're checking on that.
Oh, no.
1 second.
His microphone's under those papers.
Back?
He's back. We got you.
Okay, I'm back. I think that the glove is not a nitrite glove. It's a nitrile glove. And its significance is not really clear. There may very well be some evidence on it. It'll be chemically tested. It'll be looked at with all kinds of different lighting systems to see if there are anything obvious, any stains, any kind of chemicals. I'm really not sure that it's that crucial a piece of evidence, to be honest with you. Although we know that the killer was wearing gloves at the time that this was done. But there's nothing to compare it, though, because we do not have the evidence from the crime scene.
Jason Jensen, Walmart receipt, 2 Marshalls receipts, perhaps for clothing. We know he was clad in black that night. Might be able to put 2 and 2 together here.
Right. If he purchased these clothes in order to commit a crime, they're hoping that they can go back to these particular stores, see any surveillance footage to see exactly what he bought. If it's all black attire, it's kind of self-explanatory. He wanted to be able to move in the dark of night.
And we know that Dylan, the witness, saw the killer clad in black. All right, let's get to some more of these items that were seized from the apartment.
Brooke, good morning. She said, I think he buried the knife. And that's why I was wondering, like, why he took that trip to Colorado, why he was driving around even the day of the murders. And, they see him miles and miles away at that store, the grocery store, etc. Like when his phone was shut off too, periodically through the day. So it's like, where is, I'm sorry, I have to get rid of AA. I tried, but you're gone. When he turns his phone off driving around that day, is it because he's hiding his location because that's when he disposes of the weapon? I think that it's crucial to find out where the knife is. People think it's in that river nearby. Definitely could be, for sure. So in this time that we have until the next court hearing in June, do you think that they'll try their best to find that knife? Do you think they'll find it?
Apartment, a dust container from a Bissell Power Force vacuum, 8 possible hair strands, 1 Fire TV stick with a cord and plug, 1 possible animal hair strand, 3 more possible hair strands. Don't forget that Murphy, Kaylee's dog, was in the room when police responded to the house on Sunday around noon. We've got there you see Murphy in the background there. So Murphy was at the scene. Dr. Michelle Dupree, let's start with the human hair. What are your thoughts about it looks like 11 possible strands of hair. What can be done with that?
Those actual hair strands can be checked for DNA and checked against the victim as well as the alleged suspect.
And is it...
And just like in the Delphi murder, there's rumor of a cat hair linking Richard Allen, who's accused in that case of the murders of Abby and Libby. There's rumor that his cat hair is found at the crime scene where the bodies were found. Again, we don't know. We won't know until it goes to court and gets laid out and ironed out. But here it sounds like it could be a similar situation. Murphy's hair stuck on Bryan or at his apartment somehow. And thank you, Tom. And I will check my email for sure. It's definitely a large knife. That's for sure. And thank you so much. And thanks everyone for being here.
Definitive? You have a hair strand. That's it. That's all you need.
If you have the end of the hair strand, you may test that for DNA, and that would be definitive.
What if you don't have the end?
We're about to revisit an uncomfortable.
More difficult. You can test for likenesses and consistent with, but it's not necessarily definitive.
Dr. K, what do you think about this animal hair? What can we do with that?
It could be very significant. You talk to any pet owner, and they will tell you that part of their pet is on their clothing. I look at my jacket right now. I probably have my cat's hair all over me. It clings, static electricity. There's a lot of literature on DNA analysis of various domesticated animals. People often want their animals, to be proven to be, the right breed. Makes it worth a lot more. So, there's a lot of DNA work, and clearly, if you find a hair, dog hair, amongst that evidence that was just collected, and it matches DNA-wise the hair of Murphy. That puts him at the scene.
That devastating. I mean, could it come down to one dog hair for this jury? Amazing. All right, let me ask you, Jason Jensen, about this Fire Stick, this Fire TV stick with a cord and plug. What type of information do you think they could garner there?
A Fire Stick will actually have apps for your TV that you're using, and sometimes you can have browser history on it, and you can also use it as a flash drive because it has 8 gigabytes of memory. So oftentimes if I'm in a pinch, I'll use any kind of device that has a USB port to transfer a file. So it's entirely possible that he hides specific files like photo images or something like that on the Fire Stick. So it's worth collecting, if nothing else, just to rule out the possibilities.
Dr. Michelle Dupree, your thoughts about the dust container from the vacuum at the suspect's apartment?
Well, this is very interesting because there's something called Locard's theory of exchange. And what that means is any person coming into the crime scene brings something with them from their home, their car, their yard, but they also take something with them when they leave that crime scene. And so analyzing that dust is going to give us possibly some trace evidence that can be linked back to the suspect, to his house, to his car, or whatever.
Dr. K, how difficult will it be to go through I've never seen this before, but a dust container from a vacuum?
Oh, it's hard. It's done under magnification. Sometimes microscopes have to be used. But yeah, trace evidence is very important. And if they do find something that links to the crime scene, again, you've got very, very important evidence there. In fact, crime scene people actually use handheld vacuums to go through a scene to pick up trace evidence. So here it's done already. He's left it for us.
And I wonder if the car, I'm sure the car must have been cleaned out. And I wonder if he used this for the car, for his room afterwards. All right, let's take a look at this one now. The computer tower, to me, that could be a treasure trove. The application for the search warrant, they were asking or looking for any images, digital or on paper, or of any other format which show Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, BF, one of the roommates, and/or DM, or the 1122 King Road house and/or surrounding neighborhood. They also were looking for data compilations, whether digital, electronic, showing an interest in or planning of murder, violent assault, stabbing, and/or cutting of people, data compilations showing details of the crime scene house, its location, or information about any of the victims. Jason, again, this is another very significant potential source for information.
Oh, yeah. Either before the crime or after the crime. It's good for both, because if he's interested in how to dispose of a body or something like that, like the Brian Walsh situation, that could be in part of his search memory. If he's had social media contacts with any of the victims, which we know in recent reportings that there's supposedly some kind of contact that he had with one of the victims multiple times sliding into the DM is what they keep saying. So if he's had any contacts with the victims, if he's searching for himself afterwards, like he's obsessed, any new news about the killer, it's all circumstantial, suggesting that he's got something to be concerned over.
Absolutely. We're just about out of time, but Dr. K, the dark red spot, the 2 cuttings from the pillow, the mattress cover packaged separately with multiple stains, how would the blood of the victims potentially end up in his apartment?
Well, he may have transferred blood from his body or his clothing or somehow into his apartment and maybe got onto his pillow and his mattress cover. It's really hard to say, but the main thing is it's very simple to test and determine whose blood it is, if it's blood.
And again,
and if that links to a victim, that's you're home free.
It's game over.
So, very interesting. I'm glad I got to watch that with you guys. Now, do you guys remember when they were showing images of the search warrant taking place at his apartment? They were doing something on the stairs. So he lived up, I don't know which floor, but it was not the ground floor. So you had to, I like Court TV too, Corey. I'm glad you guys like to watch it with me. So they were going through the stairs and you could see the crime scene group using some sort of product or solution on the stairs. Do you guys remember that image? I didn't have that, but do you guys remember that? So even if he's walking up his stairs, you know, some stuff from the house could be there too. All right, guys. So that is everything that I wanted to share with you guys. Yeah. Tom N says it's funny seeing, oh geez, I don't want you guys to be offended. Old people using the terminology sliding into the DMs, because that is sort of a young person type terminology, I guess you could say. But I agree, it's interesting. And that, I guess, was a direct quote from whoever stated it to People Magazine, because I've seen Vinny use that quote, People Magazine use that quote. So whoever gave them that information was using that terminology, and supposedly that was them quoting them. So, okay, second floor, I believe. Yes, I remember that. Okay, so either way, I mean, what if there was blood on the stairs walking up to his apartment? What if there's hair from one of the victims walking up to his apartment that were still there? I don't know if it would still be there. However, I've lived in apartments where, I mean, they really wouldn't come around and clean like the stairwell area except for like springtime or whatever. But it'll be interesting to know what they found, and everything that they've shared is very interesting too. So what I want to do is in the beginning of the stream, I put together like 6-minute clips with just some highlighted stuff and reading through the inventory list. So I figured instead of pausing it this time, like I did in the beginning of the stream and elaborate, I'll just play it through and then we'll end the stream that way. And I seen Alex Erickson is going live at 11:30. CDT, I'm waiting to see if you're going live because I love joining your chats. And Brittany, if you're going live, I know you like to go later, so let chat know while I change my screen up and just play through the edited stuff, the 6-minute edits that I did in the beginning of the stream. I'm not going to pause it. I'm just going to play it through and then I'll end the stream. Okay, guys? So thank you so much for being here. Hit like if you haven't. And yeah, appreciate you all.
Seized 1 nitrile type black glove, 1 Walmart receipt with 1 Dickies tag, 2 Marshalls receipts, dust container from Bissell Power Force vacuum, 8 possible hair strands, 1 Fire TV stick with cord and plug, 1 possible animal hair strand, 1 possible hair, another possible hair, a third possible hair, and a fourth possible hair, 1 computer tower, 1 collection of dark red spot collected without testing, 2 cuttings from uncased pillow of reddish brown stains, larger stain tested, 2 top and bottom of mattress cover package, separately both labeled C, multiple stains, 1 tested.
2 weeks before the slayings of 4 University of Idaho students last November, the man now accused of killing them sent a series of messages to one of the victims on Instagram. An investigator familiar with the case tells People in late October, an account that authorities believe belonged to the accused killer, sent a greeting to one of the female victims, the source says. When he didn't get a reply, he sent several more messages to her. He slid into one of the girls' DMs several times, but she didn't respond, the source tells People. Basically, it was just him saying, hey, how are you? But he did it again and again.
It was a pretty large knife, so it's really hard to call them puncture wounds. And there were definitely stabbings. And I mean, it has to be somebody that's pretty angry.
And you can see straight into the girl's place. This is the parking lot we've been hearing about, right behind their home. I mean, it's right here. You can see straight into their home. These girls never had a chance against a predator.
I would look up and I would see people in the windows almost every night.
And close enough that his phone was touching their Wi-Fi. Definitely looking into any reports of a stalker or that type of behavior around any of the victims.
We don't want to put our investigation in jeopardy by releasing what we have, that we believe it was a targeted attack. I mean, to be honest, you're going to have to trust us on that at this point, because we're not going to release why we think that.
She had no idea that true evil was genuinely watching them.
You know, it was early in the morning. Seems likely that maybe they were sleeping. Fatal ones were to the chest area or the upper body area.
Well, there was a lot of blood.
One of her last messages, she reached out to Jack and said, "Jack, get back to me." And he didn't. She goes, "We share a dog together," which they did. She's like, "You need to reach out to me. So
please come over." She was wanting Jack to come over.
There was no damage to anything, and the door was still open when we got there.
The front door, I'm told by a neighbor who walked by that morning, was wide open around 8:30, 9 a.m. 8:30 or 9 a.m. would have been a pretty good amount of time before police ever got the call that those students were dead inside.
Investigators have learned that a physical struggle took place before the murders happened.
she's a tough kid. She was a streetwise child.
She herself was a web sleuth.
You know, everyone that he cared about, he had their back.
An angel, and that she just made me proud.
If you could speak to the person responsible,
You never know how far something like this reaches, how many people it hurts, and how they're gonna have to live with this for the rest of their life. And it's something that'll never heal, you know. It's something you just would never wish on your worst enemy.
We're trying to determine if it's just a singular incident or if there was a broader based stalking incident. One call came in for an unresponsive female, an unresponsive person. And so when officers arrived, they addressed that issue, and then as well, 2 additional people were found.